Welcome back, Rebel fans. You're listening to another episode of the Rebel Talk presented by the Rebel Walk. I'm Cam Wicker, and as always, I'm here with
Zach Marath.
and we have a special guest today from the Clarion-Ledger, David Eckert. He's been an Ole Miss beat reporter here. Penn State before that. Well, no, Southern Miss before that, right? Then Penn State, right?
Yep.
Penn State grad, correct?
Yep. You got it. You outed me already.
Outed you. Yeah, Dave's joining us today. Talk a little bit of Ole Miss sports. We're gonna break down the recent portal talk, recruiting talk for football and basketball. Little NFL draft coming up, baseball obviously, and we'll end with obviously, well, like I said, the draft will end there. But we'll hop right into basketball right now. We'll do women's basketball. Star Jacobs, the forward from the forward last week that committed to women's basketball for Coach Yo out of Dallas, Texas, from UT Arlington, played a couple of years there, didn't play at Arkansas Pine Bluff. Dave, what did you see out of her? She was a really physical player from the film that I watched. Seemed like Coach Yo was really excited about her, but didn't really get to see much last year. She didn't play at Arkansas Pine Bluff. So,
yeah, that's a weird one, right? Like,
agreed.
The path is not very straight, but that's sometimes you can find players that way. So you mentioned it, 6'2", but has a scoring touch, which is big. Two-time all-conference player. I think she won the Sun Belt Player of the Year 1 year too. So she can play, right? She's yet to prove that at the power conference level, but she's getting that opportunity. So yeah, I mean, you just look at the numbers, right? Like efficient, physical, has some touch. Like I think there's a temptation with players like this to allow their previous destination to kind of disqualify them, and I don't think you should do that here. Clearly, there's some she's got game, right? So I guess is what I'm trying to say. But that's an interesting one. It feels like one of those that's either gonna be really great or we're not gonna see a whole lot of her.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, definitely I'm intrigued by that one, I guess is the conclusion.
Yeah. I'm with you there, David. I'm also really excited to see her on the defensive side of the ball with, just Coach Yo and the whole defend, all that stuff. She's 6'2", should be a really good player, but also, again, like David said, could be one of those that you don't hear much about because I'm pretty confused why she didn't play much last year, and I don't think many people have answers for that. But, it's whatever, I guess, Cam.
Absolutely, yeah. I wanted to mention too. I looked at her stats from last year, just running through before the pod. She had a couple of, I think, 3 games last year, 15 plus boards. One of those games she had 21 or 22, I think. So yeah, she's a physical player. I think Coach Yo's going to love her. She's going to defend like Coach Yo wants her to, and like Dave said, it's going to be one of those ones probably where you see a lot of it. It's going to be amazing, or she's going to come off the bench behind Carissa Richardson, someone like that, just kind of be a role player.
Sure.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that if that is the outcome,
right.
And I think, and I don't want to misstate. I think I read something about an injury at Pine Bluff last year in a very niche publication that I couldn't really verify the accuracy of. So I didn't report it, but so we'll see. But yeah, she feels like a Coach Yo player, doesn't she?
Yes,
absolutely.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I think definitely one of the early season storylines will be following her and where she's kind of at in the hierarchy.
Absolutely. Yeah. You see on the bottom of the screen there, basketball portal closes May 1st. That is for women's and men's. I believe the graduate transfers is a little different rule there. Not too sure. I believe TJ mentioned something that to me off the podcast. But yeah, that's all really for women's basketball. Nothing too much there. I believe Sailor Poffenbarger committed somewhere else, I believe, right?
I missed that, actually.
Great question.
I believe she committed somewhere else. We talked about it on the last pod, but I think she committed somewhere else.
Yeah,
I haven't heard too much Ole Miss with her anymore anyway.
You guys. Yeah. Yes, she did. Okay. We're good.
Okay. Yeah, so that's all we got for women's basketball. We're hopping into a little bit of men's hoops right here. We'll start out with Dre Davis. He was the most, I guess, the last week commit, I guess a week 2 today now
Sure.
on the 17th. Seton Hall guy. He had 2 years at Louisville before that, played a good bit there. I think started a lot of games there. Didn't start year 1 at Seton Hall. Then the next year starts every game, it seems like. And I think 15 points a game, 6 boards. Just seems like the Chris Beard type player, like we mentioned, Coach O type player. Chris Beard type player, taller guard that's going to play probably forward like Alan Flanagan did. And really just see it here on the highlights. He's a versatile guard. He scores. And I think, like I said, Chris Beard type player.
Yeah, I think really, I imagine we're going to talk about him, but I think most of the guys that they landed are Chris Beard type players, right?
Yes.
It feels like he's identified a profile. And really, you could feel this coming at the end of the season last year, just with the way that he was talking about his team and the parts of it that he very clearly did not love. You could feel like, hey, they're going to be after a certain prototype here. And Dre Davis, I think, fits that, right?
Yes.
He's a guard who rebounds. Like, that's Chris Beard kind of in a sentence, right? Like, physical guard, he can score it. Maybe he was a little bit better from 3 last year than he was this year. Maybe get those numbers back up. But yeah, can do a little bit of everything. Looks like he's pretty good numbers wise. I haven't grinded a ton of Dre Davis film, but just from the numbers, it looks like he's pretty effective on the defensive end of the floor as well. So, and you'd imagine he would be too with that length.
Right.
So yeah, definitely a Chris Beard player, like you said.
Exactly. Just going off of David there, that was kind of the one thing I felt was missing all of last season. There really wasn't that bigger guard / forward, I guess you could say, who could score at will. We saw Flanagan do it at times, but again, like Beard he's isolating these dudes out of the portal, and he just got himself 3 or 4, and Dre Davis lines right into that group.
Absolutely. I think Dre Davis, like Dave said, just that longer guard, going to play a lot of defense for him. Chris Beard expressed a lot of concern with that team last year. And I wanted to mention, too, the transfers that entered this past week. Austin Nunez entered, Brandon Murray entered, both those guys, kind of that guard role. And Musa Cisse, obviously, the center, entered as well. But, obviously don't really blame Nunez or Murray there. It seems like Beard was heavily pursuing the guard in this portal class. Jalen Murray sticking around, but I talked with Zach about this in the last pod. Talked about it with him off the pod. Seems like Murray might move to more of that scoring role, like we see that he's good at. He's not the traditional point guard, smaller guy, but a solid scorer. And I think if you could just get him in that spots where he can score, shoot the 3, he'll be better for Ole Miss next year for sure.
I think if Juju is like your 6th or 7th guy in your rotation, you're in a great spot. Right, because he's good at particular things. He doesn't necessarily have like the all-around skill set. So I don't think they loved his defense last year. And look, he's got he's not the biggest guy. It's tough, right? And he's making the jump from St. Peter's to the SEC. So if you can kind of allow him to specialize, I think that would really help him and Ole Miss, right? So, but you mentioned the other guys, right? Like with Brandon Murray, I just really didn't feel like it worked here for whatever reason. Obviously he's a better player than what he showed, and the opportunities weren't always there for him. And then Austin Nunez, I kind of like Austin Nunez. Development wise, I think he's got a future, but obviously there's guys coming in who are ahead of them in the pecking order. And Musa Cisse had kind of said, he told us in the locker room after the SEC tournament that he was, if he came back to college basketball, that he would like to stay at Ole Miss. So I don't really know what changed there, but again, like, I don't necessarily know that Ole Miss got what they were counting on with him. Obviously impactful defensively, maybe not dominant, and but obviously had a ton of preseason issues. He was hurt, had the waiver stuff. Like it was a tough year for him. So hopefully he gets a fresh start somewhere else and can be an impactful player wherever he ends up.
For sure.
Yeah,
and go ahead, Zach.
That was just like, now that I'm thinking back, the Cisse and Murray stuff, just like, oh my gosh, dude. And now, of course, 1 year later, they're in the transfer portal. And again, Cisse, he struggled to rebound along with Sharp, which was, I don't know, it just blew my mind the whole year. Like these two guys who were over 7 feet tall can't grab a rebound. No disrespect to them, but I think they had to go somewhere else, him and Murray specifically, just to see if their talents are still there and maybe better. I hope so, at least.
I think,
for sure.
In regard to the rebounding issue, I think Ole Miss was getting beaten off the dribble so routinely at the point of attack that your shot blockers then have to rotate and address, that, and that takes them out of position to be able to rebound the ball. But yeah, definitely not the numbers that you wanted from them, obviously. So
yeah,
obviously Cisse and Murray weren't, like y'all said, weren't the players that Beard wanted them to be. Devon Barnes, another player that kind of built like Dre Davis, kind of like Alvin Flanagan, that type of build for Chris Beard. Sam Houston State played against Ole Miss last year when Sam Houston State came to town at the Tap Pack game, I believe that was. Close game. I think it was like a 3-point game it ended up being. Barnes had 22 points that game, drained 4 threes too. So, solid player. Seems like he's a solid shooter, about 39% from three. Started a lot at Houston State, played at Texas Southern. Sam Houston State played at Texas Southern as well. Went to high school in the Memphis area, so he's kind of coming back home, it seems like, kind of. Played all 33 games last year for Sam Houston State. They were, I guess, a solid ball club last year. It seemed like they weren't just absolutely terrible. So, 39% from 3-point range, 13 points per game. Javon Barnes, what do you think about Javon Barnes, Dave?
Yeah, I think, you kind of touched on the stats there. I think something with him too is like sneaky winner as well. He's been to the NCAA tournament twice with Texas Southern, and that's a program. And I don't know how deep into the weeds you guys are on college basketball, but there's like a college basketball Twitter meme about Texas Southern going like 4-14 in the SWAC and then winning the tournament again anyway. But that's valuable, right? That's the type of experience you want on your team. And obviously, I think with the guys that Chris Beard has kind of amassed here, like this is a team that you expect to make the NCAA tournament. So having guys who have been there, before matters. You touched on the numbers again, like the roster labels him as a forward. I just kind of call him as a wing, 6'5" wing, obviously has some ball handling skills. Another one of those kind of the same profile, like bigger guys who give you some length on the floor and hopefully, if you're Chris Beard, kind of fix some of those defensive issues you had last year.
Yeah, just like you said, David, it just seems like Barnes is almost not a lesser version, but on the stat sheet, a lesser version of what Dre Davis and Makeel Brown-Jones are going to bring to Ole Miss. But again, I think he's going to slide into this rotational wing spot perfectly and just provide depth, another aspect of the team that was missing big time last year.
Absolutely. I think Barnes, like you said, is going to provide some depth for this team. Seems like he's the Chris Beard type player, the one he goes after all the time. I know I keep saying it, but it just seems like he goes after that bigger guard, the forward that's going to kind of play in between, that can rebound the basketball as well. But I'm really just going to wonder how this is going to work out for the free-flowing offense of Chris Beard, just because he's going to have more ISO players, especially with the guys he's going after next, which we'll mention those guys here in a second. But it just seems like that free-flowing offense might have – I don't want to say I'm the coach or anything, but it might need some work, I guess, for the more ISO players that can get them involved more, because it's not going to work just ISO ball the whole game.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's that's the kind of the challenge, right? When you're a program like Ole Miss that, and they do this football as well. You got, and anybody who's watching the show knows that. But you kind of pick the best player here, pick the best player from there. And when you do that, you give yourself a challenge, kind of molding that into a unit. Lane Kiffin talks about it all the time. And so I think Chris Beard had that challenge last year. He's going to have it again. So that's, again, it's the transfer portal kind of creates this situation where, you have a lot of teams that hoard a ton of the talent, and it's like, all right, can we make this team equal to or better the sum of its parts? And that's, I think, the challenge for Chris Beard this offseason.
For sure. So hopping into some other guys who aren't committed to Ole Miss but have been in heavy talks, we'll start off with Sean Padula, Oklahoma native. Seems like he's down to Oklahoma and Ole Miss there. Virginia Tech for 3 years, I believe, his past year with the junior year. Seems like he's a ball-dominant guard. Haven't watched too much film on him, but from what I've seen, he seems like a special player. It seems like he's the guy that's going to get the ball to other people. But also, he scores at three different levels, at the rim, mid-range, and three-pointer. It seems like this is a guy that Chris Beard wants to, I guess, complete the team as a whole, get that more traditional point guard.
Yeah, quality defender, too, if you look at those numbers. So, totally agree. He would be a huge get because, like you mentioned, he's good at all three levels on offense, and he can really defend. And, not to be cliche, but a point guard with 3 years of high major experience matters too. So,
yes,
if they can close the deal on that one, then, that's a really, really big deal.
It's a huge deal, David. And again, that point guard, it wasn't there on last year's team as much as they went to Juju. And honestly, I thought he showed a lot of improvements, but again, he's just not that traditional type point guard like Padula is. And like David said, averaging over a steal per game. I think Beard can maximize that even more and just make him a threat on whether he's scoring and also as a perimeter defender, just to kind of make his game even more well-rounded than it already is.
Absolutely. And there's also the Brazilian guard that coming in. I don't want to torch his last name, but
Klafke, right? Klafke?
Yeah.
Klafke, okay.
Yeah.
So, they also have him coming out. I know he's pretty highly touted, played in that NBA academy for Brazil. So, obviously, he'll add some guard depth there. Not too sure much on him. I haven't watched too much film, but it seems like he might be into that point guard role as well.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Dave.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
All right. Well, we're going to hop into Javon Small. He's the next guard Ole Miss kind of been pursuing in this portal. OK State guy. I believe he's more kind of like Padula, ball dominant guard. He's more. I didn't see much in the film of him scoring at the rim as much. Seems like a mid-range threat, 3-point threat, solid defender. But it seems like I said with Padula, it seems like Beard's going after that last piece to his team.
I'm interested to see what he does, guys, because he's got some space now, right? Like it's
yes,
and I hesitate to like even go there because I think operating under the assumption that coaches respect the scholarship limit in the NIL era is a faulty assumption. I don't know what Chris Beard, is or isn't doing, but they've got, I think, three spots to fill now. So, obviously it seems like they're going to get a point guard. Which option that kind of ends up being, or both, we'll see. I guess maybe a question for you guys is, obviously they're bringing in John Bull, and they added Malik Dia. I wonder if there's a traditional big with Cisse's departure that they might go after. We'll see. I guess it probably depends on what they think of John Bull and his ability to kind of give them minutes right away. But that to me would seem like the next direction. I don't know. We'll see.
No, you're exactly right, David. There's three spots to fill. You know they're definitely going to take a point guard. Whether that's Small or Padula, I guess we'll see. Looks like things are heating up with Padula. But, again, I know they like Small a lot. but they need another big, hopefully with some experience, because John Boley's a fantastic player. He blocks shots like an absolute animal. He can score at will. But again, there's just lacking that experience that Beard's been able to find at the portal, just not at the center position. And I really do like Malik Dia, but only 6'9", not one of those 7'7" type players.
Absolutely. I think Malik Dia is going to be good for Ole Miss. I think he's going to be a good defender, solid rebounder for especially someone 6'9", 6'10" in that area. But like you just said, like Dave said with John Ball, don't really know what that's going to look like. Don't know how much trust they're going to have in him. I do think he's probably going to play right away just because they don't really have another center yet. Even if they go get a more traditional center, you're still probably going to want a guy, especially in the early games of the season, just to test it out, see if you can do like the 2-center rotation and throw another guy in there like you did last year with the 2-center rotation. And if John Ball can be the guy that you hoped he was when you picked him up in recruiting, I think the front court for Ole Miss will be a lot better than people think it'll be.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And, I hate to say it because it just kind of makes me sad, but we've kind of arrived, I think, at a place, especially in basketball, maybe not in football, where and you kind of see it with who the portal departures have been for Ole Miss. Like, if you're going to make an impact, you're probably playing pretty close to right away. If it and I don't mean starting and getting 30 minutes, but contributing. And so, I know a lot of people who are kind of advising student athletes are kind of saying, identify a place where you can go play pretty close to right away. Because if you don't, the odds of you being a portal guy after year one, I think are significant. So, for when we're talking about John Bull's future at Ole Miss, I think it's reasonable to expect him to have an impact year one.
That's a great point, Dave. Seriously.
For sure. That's really all we got on basketball today, guys. Really not too much to talk about other than recruits, the portal guys. But like I said, May 1st is when the portal closes for basketball. Just keep an eye out for Padula, Javon Small, those guys committing. I believe me and Zach were talking about Padula may commit here soon, so just keep an eye out for those guys committing. We're going to hop into football next. Ole Miss had one recent recruit in the 2025 high school class, Jacoby Hobson from Lake Cormont, Mississippi, same high school as Cam Franklin. Really safety, linebacker type, kind of like Suntrine Perkins a little bit. Seems like Pete Golden goes after those like hybrid type linebackers, safety guys that plays in the slot, come off the edge. And that kind of really is what Jacoby Hobson kind of does, especially in a lot of the film that I was watching of him. Seems like he comes off the edge a lot, stays in that slot linebacker role, but kind of guards some people as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what Pete Golden's going to do with him.
It's funny. I actually I went to go see Lake Cormorant last August, shortly after Cam Franklin committed, I think, if I have my timeline right. And Cam Franklin was like half hurt, half playing in this game, and so he wasn't super impactful. But I had no idea who this was, and I was like, I watched the game. I'm like, oh my god, so.
It's a good sign.
It's a good sign, and 9 months later, here he is. I know who he is now.
Right.
He's, you touched on it there. I think the type of player Pete Golding really likes, positional versatility, and look, somebody who's kind of a little bit in the backyard here, and knows the area, isn't, the transition's not going to be too tough for him, you'd imagine. So good get, and you'd imagine he's a pretty good fit at Ole Miss.
Exactly, David. Cam, you mentioned Suntrine Perkins. Now, I'm currently watching Hobson take the ball just like Perkins as a running back 90 yards down the field. So I think all signs are pointing in the right direction.
Were you guys at the Centurion Perkins state title game where he ran?
I wish.
I was not.
Oh my gosh.
Were you, David?
I was. It was, and the best part of that game was he kicked off as well. He did the kickoff. So,
That's the best part, man. Yeah.
They just did everything. But yeah.
No shame in getting tackled by the kicker on that one. No shame in that. No shame in that. Yeah, but like you guys said, Hobson, like Dave said, it won't be too hard for Hobson, I guess, to adjust here. Have a teammate in Cam Franklin, a former teammate in Cam Franklin, that he'll join as long as Cam Franklin sticks around. And really, like Zach said as well, it stands out on film. His size stands out on film. Like, he just looks a lot bigger than a lot of these high school players. I mean, I know it's high school. I know these guys aren't all D1 recruits, but he just looks a lot bigger than a lot of these guys. I think he's about like 6'2", 6'3", 200 pounds. So around that same size as Perkins. So it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how they use Hobson. That was the only really high school guy that's kind of been on the radar for Ole Miss. I know Brame has kind of been on the radar ever since the tight end Brame has been on the radar a little bit for Ole Miss. Haven't heard too much about him, but there has been some portal guys for Ole Miss. Running back position has been really, I guess, the most talked about position. I guess that's not stacked as the rest of the others. And with the injuries of Bentley and Diggs that they're dealing with right now, seems like Lane Kiffin wanted to add some guys. Henry Parrish committed, former Ole Miss running back, went to Miami for a little while. And then Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt committed from New Mexico. I believe he was at Alabama State before that. And really just kind of adding to that running back room, kind of getting those last couple of pieces for Lane Kiffin with this hyped up season. And I've already seen what Henry Parrish can do, but when I was watching Krosky-Merritt, it seemed like he might be one of the fastest guys on the field next year.
Yeah. He's one of the – I had a good stat. I don't have it in front of me, but one of the most explosive running backs in the G5 last year. Had a bunch of explosive plays. And I think it's notable too because you mentioned he was at Alabama State up until last year, and he really got better as the season went along, which I think is interesting for a guy who's adjusting from a lower level. So he's really interesting to me. Obviously, Henry Parrish as well. I just think it's really good in this Lane Kiffin offense that, runs the ball a ton and moves fast to have options, right? And they've put themselves in a position to do that, right? I think Ulysses Bentley's a really good player. Obviously, he performs whenever he's in an Ole Miss uniform, but I think it's probably unfair on him just to be like, hey, you're the running back. Here's 250 carries. That's not a recipe for effective football, especially in the way that Lane Kiffin designs his offense. So they got options, and we'll kind of see how the hierarchy works itself out positionally. But they're in a position to be as fresh at that spot as often as they would like to be, which I think is all you can ask for.
Right. And again, Bentley, like you said, it'd just be unfair to do that to him, a guy who's battled injuries ever since he really got to Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. And then Krosky-Merritt, I think he scored 17 touchdowns last season, averaging 6.3 yards per carry. Some good numbers there. I'll say that. And then Parrish, again, I saw a clip of a Miami fan basically saying we lost our most consistent running back over the last 2 years. Anytime the opposing fan base is saying that, it makes me smile, and it's a good sign for me. So, and again, watching the spring ball, I'm sure you guys can relate. The running back room was like Riscano, and then Bentley and Logan Diggs were hurt. Yeah. I'm like, who's out there? So this is awesome. And again, it's transformed this running back room into arguably one of the best in the country, just like that.
For sure. And also Trent Howland, I believe, spent 2 days here at Ole Miss. I know there's not too much there to talk about with him, but Indiana guy, he's huge. He's like 240 pounds, just a workhorse type of guy. Seems like that type of guy that you can get the ball 200 times a year. I mean, I don't know how much that'll work in college with the Lane Kiffin offense, but he's that workhorse type of guy. I don't know if he will commit to Ole Miss, but he did visit for 2 days here just recently. But, yeah, like you guys said, Kiffin has options now. Henry Parrish, we saw it at Ole Miss, saw it at Miami. He can catch the ball at the backfield. Kiffin will most likely do that a lot with him. We see him do it a lot with Bentley. And like you said, it's kind of unfair to just throw everything on Bentley. And even Diggs, when Diggs comes back from that injury, it was a pretty tough injury he suffered there at the end of the year last year. So it's just tough, like, to just throw everything on those guys and expect them to roll with it. You don't have Quinshon Judkins, so you can give the ball to 230 times a year anymore. And if you just add guys like Krosky, Merritt, Parrish, and it's really just running back by committee now. But, I mean, obviously you still have Bentley, like you said, going to perform in an Ole Miss uniform. But, I mean, when you add guys like Parrish and Krosky, Merritt, it's only going to get better for the Lane Kiffin offense.
Yeah, right. They had to do this. Like,
yes,
it was
a
happy.
must.
Exactly. You're happy with the pieces that you got. I think they're quality pieces, but, like, they had to get something.
Yes.
So, I think mission accomplished for them at the running back position.
Exactly.
Yeah, and a couple of guys entered the portal as well. It was, I believe, Joshua Harris last week for Ole Miss, and then the couple of walk-ons that entered the portal last week. I believe we talked about that on the last podcast, the Keyshawn Lawrence mishaps there. But other than that, here's the NFL draft guys that will be hoping to get their name called, or whether that be on draft night, unrestricted free agents on practice squads. UFL now is really kind of getting big. I don't know if you guys been watching that, the Matt Corral, Jordan Ta'amu duel this past weekend. But all these guys probably have a shot at going to the UFL or even the Canadian Football League. I know the Japanese Football League was at the pro day for Ole Miss. So, I mean, there's a lot of options for these guys out there for sure.
Yeah. There. You mentioned it. Like, there's so many levels of pro football that, these guys are going to have a place to play if they want to. I think the three relatively safe choices to get picked will be the guys that Ole Miss sent to the combine. Obviously, Cedric Johnson, DeAndre Prince, and Dijon Anthony. It might just be because I just think he's an awesome person, but I feel in my soul that I think somebody is going to see the Dayton Wade numbers and take a shot.
I'm praying.
Yeah, and we'll see, because that would be an awesome story. I think he'll get a UDFA deal regardless.
Yes.
He'd be an easy choice for one of those, but he's really, like, of the three that didn't get the Indy invite, he's I think probably the most likely. So we'll see there, but yeah, kind of a light draft crop, but there's reasons for it, and it's because Ole Miss kind of circled the wagons so aggressively to get so much of their veteran talent back for next year. So next year's crop will not be as light, I don't think.
I'm excited to see that one. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, Pro Day should be exciting next year. That's all we got on recruiting. I know we just hit you guys a lot of recruiting and portal talk, but that's all we got for that. We'll end with baseball after this short little commercial break. And we're back, guys. Talk a little Ole Miss baseball here. It hasn't been the greatest year for the Mike Bianco crew over here in Oxford. Been a rough past couple of years despite the championship. Even that year, the championship, we've talked about it a couple of times, me and Zach. The championship year was not the greatest year in the regular season. They got hot late at the year. We all know the story there. But, yeah, harping on these guys coming up, they have Alabama, number 23. And it seems like, I guess, it's just like 4 straight ranked opponents for Ole Miss for baseball, it seems like.
Yeah. They're crossover.
Yeah.
Games. They're like, usually you'll get a Mizzou in there, nope. Here's really good Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, and South Carolina.
Jeez.
But
yeah, they play Alabama this weekend. Alabama's 7-11 in SEC play. Ole Miss is 6-12. So not too much of a difference there. This is the chance for Ole Miss to kind of get themselves back in the middle of the pack. They're sitting at the bottom, closer to the bottom right now, just ahead of Missouri and LSU, kind of right there with Florida as well. But they're right behind Alabama in the SEC West standings. If they can come away with the win in this series, I guess they'll probably be ahead of them with a tiebreaker, and they'll be feeling more comfortable going into Hoover. They got the win against North Alabama on Kids Day. Dave, I believe you were there, right? Was there a lot of kids screaming?
Yes, my ears are still recovering. But it's awesome. I don't know. Like it's it's just a fun way to shake things up, and it's you can't be unhappy when there are 7,000 kids around you all having like the best day of their lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, no, it was cool, and Grayson Saunier pitched well. I think Ole Miss got some big wind aided hits because the wind was blowing out, and
Yes.
avoided any unwanted shenanigans. So, but yeah, you look at Alabama, right? And there again, it was 4 out of 5 because at the time they played Georgia was under 500 in SEC play, but they closed their season with 3 of their next 4 series are against teams with losing SEC records, right? In Alabama, Auburn, and LSU, and then obviously the Texas A&M series, and they are not under 500. But I say that to say that there's a path. They still have
Absolutely.
they have to win the games, but it's doable. So must-win series for them this weekend. Period. We'll see. We'll see if they can get it done.
For sure, Dave. And again, we got 2 midweek games. You got one against Mississippi State, and then you go to Southern Miss. So 2 games you like to use as momentum to kind of prepare yourself for these big-time SEC weekend games. But again, you need 2 this weekend. And then you go to Auburn. Again, I think you need 2. A&M, you got to at least steal 1. I know it's tough, but they're coming here to Oxford. And then in Baton Rouge, I think it could be you're playing for a spot at Hoover at that point against LSU. So we're going to get answers quickly, but again, it starts with Alabama and getting 2 this weekend.
Absolutely, for sure. They're going to have to go on a stretch here down the road here. They're going to need probably a sweep at some point if they want to get a little bit higher up in the standings.
Yeah.
But like you said, they're going to have to try to figure out to steal a game against Texas A&M, especially at home. I know it's the number 1 team in the country, but you played Arkansas when they were number 1 in the country really close all weekend. Probably should have stole 2 games there. You had the lead in 2 of them. And if you can mimic that at home against A&M and have a crowd behind you, you got to find a way to steal 1 for sure.
I really think, and I did a story on it this week, just kind of looking at the math with where their RPI is. I really think if they get to 13, they're okay. You kind of laid it out there. If that's winning the 2 series against, or the 3 series against the losing teams and stealing 1 against Texas A&M. I think if they are in position to give the committee a choice on whether or not they get in, their RPI will push them over the top. I think at the time I wrote the story, I think they were 24th. I think they're 21st now. Like the RPI is really healthy. So you just need the SEC wins to kind of justify your inclusion if you're Ole Miss. So we'll see if they can get them.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Zach.
No, go ahead, man.
I just wanted to highlight a couple of guys on the weekend. Seems like Will Furness has kind of been heating up. I talked about it with Zach. In SEC play, he's batting about 290. Didn't bat great before SEC play. We talked about him. We talked with him early in the year. It seemed like he was working on a lot of things when we talked with him.
Yeah.
But it seemed like the more of the travel ball approach, coaches by committee, everyone kind of just talking with them here and there. Seemed like it's kind of worked out for him. He's hitting the ball the opposite way a lot. He's beating the shift a little bit more, and he's getting the ball at the yard, and that's the type of hitter he's going to be, get the ball at the yard. And I think seeing Will Furness kind of excel has got to be exciting for the Ole Miss fans and the Ole Miss team, just seeing that you're hoping that you have him for the next couple of years as well. Ethan Leje, Andrew Fisher has also been really good for Ole Miss this year, hitting a ton of home runs. Leje didn't have the greatest year last year. Kind of a cool story there. Kind of wanted to come back. Yaka's talked about it all year. Wants to go to the playoffs. Wants to go to Omaha. Kind of emerged as a little bit of a leader there. And I like what I've seen out of him this year. Solid left fielder, too. I know he's probably really haven't played there much, but he's an outfielder. Seems like a gritty type of player, too. And then, obviously, the pitchers this weekend, JT Quinn came back. He had a solid outing. Jones got the save in that win that they had in the back half of the doubleheader. Dennis and Doyle didn't look bad in their starts. They kind of held them at bay for most of the games there, even though Dennis didn't get the win in his, or Doyle didn't get the win in his. And then Maddox obviously got banged up a little bit in the first game. But really just a solid weekend out of those three hitters I mentioned. And then the pitching staff, at least for the starters in the back half games, didn't look bad for Ole Miss.
Yeah, I love Liam Doyle. I said this.
Me too.
I said this on the D1 Baseball podcast the other week. I was like I really think he has the potential to just kind of be this staff's ace. I know he's pitching on Saturdays, but it just feels like he's right on the corner of just being like lights out. And just that stuff from the left-handed side. He's got the right mentality too. I really believe in Liam Doyle, and if you get to the point where you've got that special stud, it's more than Ole Miss has had the last couple of years. I mean, it's just been really tough for them. So we'll see if Mason Nichols pitches this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like JT Quinn's stuff too. I'm interested to kind of see now that he's back what his role is. Is he going to be that Sunday guy? Or are they going to bring him out of the pen? I guess we'll find out. But there's some good pieces in this rotation. It's just for whatever reason it hasn't really clicked. Obviously, some injuries impacting that, but we'll see. We'll see if they can get it sorted out in time.
Right. Cam, I know we talked about it a little bit before, but you'd like to see Jackson Ross and Ethan Groff kind of taking that step that everyone's expected, but hasn't really gotten an SEC play. And I think if those two guys can start to set it up a little more at the top of the order, it really just propels things to that next step. And that's what you need when you're ending these last 4 series that you kind of have to start to win.
Absolutely. And I'm glad Dave mentioned Mason Nichols as well. Going to be interesting to see what they do with him this weekend. I know he was, I think Bianca mentioned the sinus infection when he won the state game, and then mentioned, was it his shoulder?
Yeah. And it was one of those just like, oh yeah, by the way, his shoulder hurt. And I was like,
yeah,
that seems like
okay. Sinus infection and shoulder. That sucks. That sucks.
Yeah. We'll see. I think Bianco said day-to-day on Tuesday. So
yes,
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see what that rotation looks like this weekend. Like I said, they play Alabama, number 23 Alabama this weekend, 6:30 on Thursday and Friday, and 2 p.m. on Saturday. I believe that'll be during the NFL draft. Probably be watching that from the booth, probably most of us. So, big weekend for Ole Miss baseball. Double-decker Arts Festival this weekend in Oxford too. So probably a lot of people in town. It seems like Oxford's been full for the past 3 weeks. So it's interesting couple of weeks coming up for Ole Miss baseball as well as the city of Oxford. I think that's all we got for you guys today. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Rebel Talk. Make sure to tune into therebelwalk.com for all your Ole Miss sports needs.